Hey Holly, I'm going to buy a gift for David, so could you handle the cooking?
We decided to hold David's birthday party at our house, and I was in charge of the cooking. That day, Amanda showed up unusually cheerful and made this suggestion to me around noon.
Please make some delicious food.
Amanda requested. Then she said, "I'm going to use the bathroom," and left the room. It was obvious from her attitude that Amanda didn't think very highly of me. She had been harassing me in various ways, and I even consulted my husband, Keith, about it. However, Keith wouldn't listen to me. Instead, he took Amanda's side and scolded me for overthinking. At that moment, I noticed Amanda sneaking around in the kitchen, fiddling with something. But I ignored it, thinking she was just playing another prank. After that, Amanda left for shopping, still in a good mood as if nothing had happened. Actually, Amanda secretly made some elaborate arrangements. But I didn't notice, and by chance, my husband Keith returned from a business trip and took over making dinner.
How about I do something nice for Dad for once?
Keith, who took Amanda's harassment lightly, was in for a big surprise later. My name is Holly Moore, a 32-year-old part-time housewife. I live with my 30-year-old husband, Keith. We met 5 years ago through a friend. I was consumed by work at the time, but as friends around me started getting married one after another, I began to feel anxious about being alone. I just don't have any opportunities to meet guys, commuting between work and home. My workplace was full of either married people or older singles, so there was no way for me to meet someone I could imagine marrying. I vented this frustration to my friend, Janet.
There's a guy at my office who's looking for a girlfriend. He's really fun. You should meet him.
That's how I got introduced to Keith. As Janet had said, Keith was good at conversation and had a great sense of humor, and we hit it off right away.
So, you're a systems engineer, Holly?
Yes, I spend all day in front of a computer working. It's quite dull.
Well, how about we go see a movie sometime?
Keith suggested, smiling, and started talking about his favorite movies. I wasn't very knowledgeable about movies and didn't have much interest, but Keith's enthusiasm made me look forward to it a little. Keith chose a romantic movie, and after watching it, I was completely wrapped up in a romantic mood. Seeing me like that, Keith smiled happily.
Actually, I love romantic movies, but it's hard to find someone who shares that interest. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Holly.
While I didn't have any prejudice, I thought it was a bit unusual for a guy to like romantic movies. I thought guys generally preferred action movies. When I said that, Keith frowned slightly.
Well, action movies aren't bad either.
He then went on to talk at length about the charm of romantic movies. Watching him passionately talk about something he loved, I found it endearing. Seeing Keith so enthusiastic about something he loves made him seem almost dazzling to me. And that's how we started dating, thanks to that movie date. Keith also lent me various novels that the movies were based on, greatly expanding my interests. We spent weekends watching movies at each other's places and discussing our thoughts. We had such enjoyable days together. And within less than a year, we promised to marry each other.
I want to keep having fun with you like this, Holly.
Yeah, me too. I want to be with you forever, Keith. I was confident that we could build a bright and happy family together. With that belief, I married Keith. However, reality wasn't so sweet. First, Keith chose a second-hand house near his parents' home as our new residence. The house was a rental and quite old, which was enough to dampen my newlywed spirit.
This place is close to my parents' house, and it's also near both of our offices. It's perfect, right?
Keith, who had decided on the place without consulting me, said this with a big smile. I was stunned. But then something even more surprising happened. Keith's mother, Amanda, who lived nearby, started visiting our house frequently right after we got married. And Amanda, while looking around the house with me, let out a big sigh.
This place is kind of old.
Was she talking about the house or me? Amanda didn't seem to like that I was older than Keith.
Can I really expect to see grandchildren with this situation?
Amanda sighed again while saying this. But at that time, I wasn't thinking much about having kids. Keith and I were both still in our 20s, and I figured we'd have kids eventually without rushing. However, a year, then 2 years passed after our marriage, and we still hadn't had any children. By then, we started to feel a bit anxious. I had continued working even after getting married, and I began to wonder if my busy schedule was one of the reasons we weren't having kids. So I made a decision. Hey, I've been thinking maybe I should go freelance and change the way I work. I suggested this to Keith. By going freelance, I could work from home and manage my workload. While it might be a bit less stable than a corporate job, it could also potentially increase my income. And most importantly, it would give me more time to spend with Keith. Fortunately, Keith's income was stable. I figured I could stay home until the kids were a bit older, and then we could both work hard again. I thought my idea was brilliant, but Keith looked a bit displeased.
So, you're saying we'll rely on my income until your freelance work stabilizes?
I was a bit annoyed by Keith's words. We had always pooled our incomes for household expenses. Keith paid the rent, but I covered all other living expenses and groceries. Don't worry, if there's a shortfall, I'll cover it from our savings. With that, Keith finally seemed to agree. Thus, in our 3rd year of marriage, I became a freelance systems engineer. And my decision turned out to be the right one. I consulted my boss about my situation when I left the company. My boss was understanding and made a proposal.
We highly value your skills as an SE, Holly. Would you consider continuing to work for us as a contractor?
I was grateful for this offer and decided to accept it. As a new freelancer, I managed to reduce my workload and spend more time on housework and with Keith. However, Amanda interfered again. She misunderstood my staying home as having quit my job.
Can't have kids? And now you're planning to leech off Keith by becoming a housewife?
Amanda started accusing me like this. No matter how much I explained that I worked from home, Amanda just didn't understand.
How can you make any money with a job you do at home?
Amanda treated me as if I were unemployed. Even when Amanda criticized me, Keith didn't defend me at all. After getting married, I realized that Keith and Amanda were unusually involved in each other's lives. In contrast, Keith's father, David, was indifferent to both of them. When I went to introduce myself before our wedding, David did nothing to stop Amanda's snide remarks. Moreover, despite being nearly 70, David was still working and spent his days off immersed in his hobbies. With David not around, Amanda interfered even more with Keith and me. Living close by and taking advantage of my being at home, Amanda visited our house almost every day. At some point, Keith even gave Amanda a key to our house. Amanda used it to enter our home uninvited, staying all day and even taking a shower before leaving. Yet Keith didn't say anything about it.
Isn't it great that Mom is helping with the housework for you?
Keith would say this while using the bathroom Amanda had cleaned and eating the dinner she cooked. However, Amanda's actions were nothing but a torment to me. By the 4th year of our marriage, Amanda's harassment had become extreme. Before, she would criticize my housework or make snide comments about not having grandchildren, which was bad enough. I tried to ignore Amanda's verbal abuse and focused on my work. but my indifference seemed to aggravate her.
Always playing on your computer. It's a shame Keith married a wife who can't even clean properly.
I couldn't help but retort. How many times do I have to tell you? I work from home. It's really problematic when you constantly interrupt my work. At that time, I was under a lot of stress with a major project deadline approaching. I snapped and raised my voice, which made Amanda glare at me intensely, before stomping out without a word. The next day, Amanda began her extreme harassment. She tried to mix chlorine bleach in bathtub when I was about to take a bath and put detergent in my tea. I started to fear for my safety. Fortunately, I noticed these attempts in advance and avoided harm. Constantly on edge, I managed to evade Amanda's traps, but I felt both physically and mentally exhausted. Desperate, I turned to Keith for help. Keith, Amanda's harassment is out of control. Please tell her to stop. Emotionally drained from Amanda's relentless abuse, I pleaded with Keith. But Keith, thinking I was bad-mouthing Amanda, snapped back at me with anger.
What? Mom would never do such a thing. You're just imagining it. You're overthinking.
Keith's furious shouting left me stunned. Why won't Keith believe me? For the first time, the thought of divorce crossed my mind. Thinking back, Keith has never once taken my side when it came to Amanda. On the contrary, he always turned a blind eye to Amanda's verbal abuse. I was deeply disappointed in Keith's attitude. Then, to make matters worse, something happened that pushed me over the edge. One morning, just after our 5th wedding anniversary, on a day Keith had off, Amanda showed up at our house with something unexpected.
5 years and no kids yet? It must be Holly's fault.
Saying this, Amanda thrust divorce papers at me. Even Keith was taken aback by this.
Wait, Mom. Divorce? That's a bit extreme. We'll figure something out.
He managed to send Amanda away. In reality, I had been seeing a gynecologist for a long time. Despite multiple attempts over the past 5 years, we hadn't been blessed with children. Initially, I thought I might be the problem, so I got tested. However, nothing was found to be wrong with me. At that time, the doctor had suggested Keith come in with me for the next visit, but Keith stubbornly refused.
I'm only 25. There's no way I have a problem. It'll happen eventually.
Keith, who was now 30, had said, "Hey, maybe we should get tested again." Keith reluctantly agreed to my suggestion. Amanda bringing the divorce papers must have made him realize the urgency. So, a few days later, we went for another test together. It turned out that Keith was the one with infertility issues. The doctor suggested starting with hormone therapy. They recommended stabilizing Keith's condition before moving on to the next stage of treatment. Hearing this, Keith's face contorted as he pleaded with me.
Holly, please don't tell Mom about this.
Keith's voice was almost tearful.
I'll tell her not to interfere about the kids. If she finds out it's my fault, I don't know what she'll say to me.
Keith's desperate plea made me feel a bit sympathetic. I decided to keep Keith's infertility a secret from his parents. So, Keith and I began serious infertility treatment. Since then, Keith did confront Amanda.
We've started infertility treatment. We'll make sure you get to hold your grandchild, so please support us.
Keith said confidently, making Amanda smile with delight.
I thought it was hopeless, but thanks to my tough love, you got motivated.
Amanda said this, smirking at me.
Holly, your time is running out, so you'd better do your best.
With that, Amanda stopped pushing me about grandchildren when Keith was around. But when Keith wasn't there, Amanda would say things like, "So it's because of your infertility that you can't have kids," which was completely off the mark. I started to get increasingly irritated by Amanda's almost daily snide remarks. I couldn't help but plead with Keith. "Amanda seems to have misunderstood that I'm the one who's infertile. Can you please talk to her again?" Keith looked at me with annoyance.
Can't you handle that yourself, Holly? Didn't I already explain it to her? Besides, we're undergoing infertility treatment. Once we have a child, Mom won't have anything to complain about.
Keith said this selfishly, not taking my plea seriously. Moreover, Keith started staying away from home, saying it was to earn money for fertility treatments, but it seemed more like he was trying to avoid getting caught between Amanda and me. Amanda's snide remarks, verbal abuse, and extreme harassment intensified. As I was troubled by Amanda, a shocking incident occurred. One day I checked the mailbox. There was a letter addressed to Keith from a credit card company that had never sent us mail before. Surprised and with a racing heart, I stared at the envelope. Keith usually preferred cash and rarely used his card. Could it be the medical bills for the infertility treatment? With this thought, I gently opened the envelope. Keith seldom checked the mail himself. When I had handed him his mail in the past, he had said,
Can you handle these little things, Holly?
Since then, I had managed the mail. Remembering this, I looked at the credit card statement inside. It clearly listed names of establishments that were obviously nightclubs and adult entertainment venues. Moreover, there were several purchases in the $1,000 range. Wait, could this mean? Yes, Keith had been spending money on women at these places. I was stunned by this fact. Gradually, a simmering anger welled up inside me. Keith had been betraying me behind my back. While I felt my life was in danger due to Amanda, Keith dismissed it as my imagination and did nothing. While I endured Amanda's baseless verbal abuse, Keith was out spending money on women. Was there any point in continuing this marriage? I immediately answered my own question. No, there wasn't. I saw no benefit in staying married to Keith for another day. I was disillusioned by Keith's actions and decided to divorce him. One day, Amanda contacted me, suggesting we celebrate David's birthday at our house. Keith happened to be on a business trip, so Amanda proposed having the celebration with just the three of us. Honestly, I didn't want to deal with Amanda any longer, but since this would be the last time, I reluctantly agreed. That day, Amanda showed up unusually cheerful and made the suggestion to me around noon.
Hey, Holly, I'm going to buy a gift for David, so could you handle the cooking? Please make something delicious.
Amanda requested. Then Amanda said, I'm going to use the bathroom, and left the room. At that moment, I noticed Amanda sneaking around in the kitchen, fiddling with something. I thought she was probably just putting something strange in a drink again and ignored it. After that, Amanda left for shopping in a good mood as if nothing had happened. Just after she left, Keith came home saying his business trip had been canceled. Keith, for some reason, was in a great mood and said to me,
By the way, we're having Dad's birthday party here today, right? I remembered Mom mentioned it before.
When I told him I was about to go shopping for it, he got even happier and said,
Oh, really? Well, let's do something nice for Dad for once.
For a moment, I remembered Amanda fiddling in the kitchen and felt a little concerned. But I figured it was just the usual prank with a drink and decided to go out. After all, Keith had scolded me before for being too paranoid. If Keith noticed Amanda's harassment, that would be a good thing. I asked Keith to start preparing dinner while I went shopping. I never imagined that decision would lead to such an irreversible event. I went to the local grocery store to buy dinner ingredients. Since Keith had come home, I bought a bit more than usual, which took more time. When I finally finished shopping and returned home, the area around our house was in an uproar. I could hear sirens in the distance. A woman from the neighborhood ran up to me, looking relieved.
Oh, thank goodness you're safe.
"What's going on?" she explained, panicking.
Your house exploded. It seems your husband was caught in the blast.
According to her, neighbors heard a noise like an earthquake and saw smoke coming from my house. They quickly called the fire department. I rushed to the house. Firefighters who were around my house stopped me, saying,
"Stay back. It's dangerous."
"I'm the resident here. My husband should be inside. Where's Keith?"
"He's over here."
Keith was being loaded into an ambulance. He was limp and unresponsive. Then I heard Amanda screaming from behind.
Why is Keith hurt? It was supposed to target Holly.
Amanda, half mad, pointed at me while being restrained by David. "Call the police." Someone shouted from afar. A lot happened all at once after that. I was so shocked that parts of my memory are missing. Amanda, who had essentially confessed, was arrested by the police who arrived at the scene. It turned out Amanda had tampered with the gas line in our house. Once she got ready, Amanda ordered me to make dinner.
If it weren't for infertile Holly, I could have seen my grandchild's face.
She screamed. Keith survived, but his injuries were more severe than expected, leaving him bedridden. Seeing his condition, I hesitated for a moment about divorcing him. Then David said something unexpected. David looked at Keith and said,
"Amanda will take care of you."
David then stared at me intently. Seeing his gaze, I made up my mind. "Keith, you betrayed me. I want a divorce."
What? You're going to abandon me in this condition?
Keith shouted. David sternly cut him off.
"Neither I nor Holly will take care of you."
"If you agree to the divorce, I won't file charges against you."
"If Amanda gets arrested, no one will take care of you. You'll be the one in trouble."
David threatened Keith. David had known all along about Amanda's harassment and Keith's misuse of household money. He had planned to reveal everything at his birthday party and push for our divorce. However, the unexpected turn of events forced his hand. David apologized to me and proposed a solution for handling Keith and Amanda.
"I can't ask you to forget everything. Of course, I'll pay you appropriate alimony and settlement money. I'm truly sorry for all the trouble caused, Holly. I hope you can live freely from now on."
David apologized to me sincerely. I accepted his proposal. A year later, I was living away from the in-laws when Amanda contacted me out of the blue. Amanda, in a weak voice, apologized.
I'm sorry about that time. It turns out Keith deceived me too.
Amanda explained that Keith had told her I was a spendthrift, which fueled her dislike for me. Moreover, Amanda had been giving Keith money from her retirement funds, believing he was broke. But over the past year, she had discovered that Keith was the real spendthrift. And since Keith had to pay me alimony and a settlement, he was left with nothing.
I secretly used our retirement funds without telling David. If he finds out, he'll divorce me. Please help me.
Amanda pleaded with me. She had learned from Keith that I was actually well off. Her request was audacious, and I was astonished by her nerve. That's impossible. Besides, I'm already remarried and pregnant. Upon hearing this, Amanda burst into tears. Ignoring her, I hung up the phone. A year later, I gave birth to a healthy child. One Sunday, while out at the local mall with my new husband and child, I unexpectedly ran into David. David smiled gently when he saw us and shared his recent news.
I divorced Amanda and now enjoy the country life I've always dreamed of.
David explained that Amanda, now old and frail, struggled to care for Keith, who often lashed out at her.
Please be happy.
David said and left. I saw him off, feeling grateful for the happiness I now had with my child and new husband.